That reading we just heard was a portion of the Passion narrative that's read each year at Good Friday. I don't know about you, but for years I'd hear that, and Pilate would ask Jesus, "What is truth?" And my mental response was, yeah. The answer is, and there's no answer. We're just left hanging. It wasn't until years later that I read all of John's Gospel, and I realized that John answers that question several times. The Gospel itself begins, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Then he goes on to say, everything that exists had its origin in God. Nothing exists that isn't rooted in God. Those who acknowledge that truth live by the truth and walk in light. Those who reject that walk in darkness and live a lie. I chose that passage because it struck me we live at a time when we're challenged again and again to answer the question, what is truth? What is truth? For example, just recently, a colleague of mine shared with me an article, I think it was from the Washington Post, and it's written by a woman who's an atheist. And the whole article is selling atheism. And the basic premise is that atheism is based on facts. Religion is based on wishful thinking. Now, I'm glad I read the article. It's an important voice from our culture to listen to. But I also realized I don't agree with her. My faith is not based on wishful thinking. It is based on facts. There are enough verifiable facts in Scripture for me to step out in faith. There are also a whole array of experiences that I've had that I cannot fully explain. They're like touchstones in my life. These are what my faith is built upon. The fact that I had those experiences is a fact. It's also a fact I can't fully explain them. What I'd like to do today is share with you 5 of those experiences with a hope that somewhere along the way you can recall your touchstones in faith that help you and strengthen you as we follow Jesus. To understand the first touchstone, you need to know I grew up in Mexico City, and I went to a boys' prep school in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I loved the school. In the spring of my second year there, I was giving a tour to a prospective student. I was a volunteer student who did that. When I was done, I was walking back to the dormitory where I lived. To my left was a soccer field, people running up and down, screaming. The breeze was blowing. It was a nice spring day. And all of a sudden, I felt as if I were encased in a bubble. I could see classmates running around. I couldn't hear anything. I could see the leaves rustling. I felt no breeze. Lasted only a couple seconds. Suddenly, pop! I heard sound. I felt a breeze. Surge of energy from within, and one word: servant. I had no idea what that meant. So that night, I made a long-distance phone call to Mexico City. I called my parents. I told them what happened. My dad answered without missing a beat. "Oh, hotel and restaurant business. That's what you need to go into." I didn't laugh. In fact, when I graduated, I went to university to major in business, specializing in hotel and restaurant business. We'll come back to that again in a minute. My senior year, I found I was in a very dark place. I had chosen to hang around with a very cynical group of classmates. One of our pastimes was there was a large sheet of paper that included the names of all 450 students in our school. We got a black marker. We decided we were going to wipe out all the ones we thought never should have been born, because we were the smartest, the bestest of all. We were pretty arrogant. In the winter of our senior year, we also got into our heads. My friends approached me. They wanted to do what they call the great poof. They said reality, in many ways, is dictated by how we look on the world. For example, if I think all people are grouchy, dishonest, can't be trusted, then that's how I'm going to perceive you. All my conversations, I'm going to say, that's right, they're grouchy, they're dishonest. Whereas if I say, they're friendly, they're trustworthy, that's how I'll perceive them. Well, we took it a step further. We decided this lectern is here because I need something to hold my book. But if I concentrate hard enough, I can poof that away, and it's gone. I know, it sounds silly, but we thought we were very brilliant. So we decided that there were 8 of us. Each of us would invite our girlfriend, and we would go rent a room at the Biltmore Hotel in New York City, and we'd stay in that room until we poofed away the whole world, and we'd go and start creation all over again with the 16 of us. You're here. We didn't poof away the world. If we'd succeeded, it would have been a disaster. But what that did is it got me thinking, what if I did poof away the world? What if I was poofed away? In other words, what if I committed suicide? Would anyone notice? And I spiraled down in depression. And I reached a point in my life where I knew how I would do it, where I would do it. I just decided when. With that state of mind, I had a dream one night. One of the most realistic dreams I've ever had. In this dream, I was out in the open in a very, very dark place. And I was walking on the top of a mountain. And I stopped at the edge and looked down, and there was a dark red light down there, like a fire. As I stood there at the edge, teetering, I realized I was not alone. There was someone next to me. I can't tell you if it was Jesus or an angel. All I knew, this being can be trusted. And without hearing words, I understood, I was being told, this is where your life is going. You can either step off the edge, whoof, and it's done, the end, or you can turn around and walk into the darkness and start life all over again. And somehow I understood that to turn around into the darkness meant cutting ties with that group of cynical friends who really defined who I was for 4.5 years. To be a senior in high school and have no identity and no friends was terrifying. But as I stood there and went through my whole life and people that mattered to me, I decided I was not ready to step off the edge. I was not ready to call it quits. I would take my chances in the darkness. And so I turned around, and with each step, it got lighter and lighter. The sun began to come over the horizon. And because this was all like the tabletop out in the southwest, I expected to see red rocks. What I saw was lush vegetation. And as the sun came over the horizon, there was a music that filled the marrow of my bones. I popped out of bed like Ebenezer Scrooge. I've never been more alive or happy to be alive in my life. When I took a shower that morning, it's as if layers of gunk came off me. On my way to breakfast that morning, I saw all those classmates whose names I crossed off. And I won't tell you the name we had for them. But I spoke to them. I said hello to them. They had wonderful treasures to share. That day, I said yes to life. I really knew nothing about God, but I made a commitment both to learn about God and to come to know God. It was a pivotal point in my life. When I arrived in college, I got involved in the campus ministry. They had a program called Search for Christian Maturity, which is like a college version of Cursillo. Got very involved with that. Then one day in the spring of my first year, I was in one of my classes, I think it was hotel management, and as a professor was lecturing, all of a sudden I felt I was encased in a bubble. I watched his mouth. I couldn't hear a word he said. I could see my classmates around me rustling paper and doing stuff. I couldn't hear it. In an instant, the bubble burst. I heard the voices again, surge of energy. This time the word wasn't servant, it was priest. The class was over at noon. I ran to the chapel on campus. Father Mackenzie, the chaplain, was setting up for Mass. I said, Father Mackenzie, I know what I've got to do with my life. I've got to be a priest. He said, yeah, go light the candles. Years later, he told me, I knew when I saw you that day that you were right. I also knew that that vocation had to be tested for many years, and he was right. I did go on to become a priest, although I did work in the hotel business for a short while. When I was 21, I was engaged to a young girl who was 18. We thought we were as mature as it'll ever be. We weren't, and the engagement fell apart. A few years later, I met a girl from Omaha. We fell in love passionately. I thought we were made for each other. I went out and bought her a ring, and I offered it to her, and she said, no thanks. So twice I thought I picked out the right girl for me. Twice I was wrong. In seminary, I was asked to do an internship in a parish. So I went back to Colorado, my sponsoring diocese. I also had to go back for meetings with the Standing Committee and the Commission on Ministry. And when I went back for one of the meetings, it wasn't the rector who came to pick me up, but it was the senior warden's daughter who was there at the airport to pick me up. She looked very nervous, but I thought, well, she seems nice. Later on, I was told that she requested to go pick me up at the airport. Long time later, she and I had a conversation. She was told there was nobody else in the parish who could go. She had to go pick me up. So we were kind of set up. But we actually hit it off in that visit that after I returned to seminary, I wrote her a letter. She answered. I knew in March I was going to be out in Colorado again, so I asked if she wanted to go out and see a movie and go to dinner. She said yes. So when I was out in Colorado, we went in her car because I had flown out, took her to my favorite restaurant. There was not a thing on the menu that she would eat. She hated it all. We went to the movies, got there early. I tried to engage her in conversation. She found everything I brought up was embarrassing. We endured the movie, something called A Goodbye Girl, which we actually watch on a regular basis now. Yes. But when we were done, she very quickly jumped with a car door between us, so there was nothing except goodbye. And we were actually both hoping we never have to go out again. It was the worst date of my life. Before going home, I went to bed. I finished reading a book by Madeleine L'Engle called The Love Letters. And the theme of the last chapter is how we need to love people for who they are, not who we want them to be. And I sat there thinking about it. And I just found myself with an immense desire to want to be with this young girl again. What I did not know is the day before, Lent had started, and she had taken on the discipline of doing evening prayer every day during Lent. When she got to the psalm, one verse caught her attention. It seemed to be saying to her, you should love people for who they are, not who you want them to be. After I had my experience of reading the book, we met briefly back at the parish where she attended and I was to do my internship. And as we looked across the room, we both had a sense someday we'll be married. We have no idea how we'll get there. Well, the first date was in March. We got engaged in October. We got married in January, and that was 45 years ago. One last event, touchstone in my life. While I was serving a parish in southwest Colorado, in the Four Corners area, a friend invited me to go with him and his wife to a place called the Lord's Food Bank in El Paso, Ciudad Juarez. You don't have enough time today for me to tell you everything that happened there. It was my experience of walking into the Acts of the Apostles. Miracles happen all the time. People's faith was palpable. It was just incredible. It was a real stretch for a little Anglo-Catholic boy from the Minnesota house to go there. One of the things that happened, we were to go minister to people in prison. And Father Thomas, the Jesuit priest who ran the organization, was very clear. No spectators. You go, you engage in ministry. It meant you prayed, you evangelized, you sang, you were involved in the ministry somehow. We were given a little exorcism prayer on a card. You can read that if you're comfortable reading prayers. You can pray the rosary. You can speak in tongues. You can sing in tongues. You can evangelize. And I thought, okay, seminary prepared me for, none of those. No. I can do the rosary. And the bonus was our sponsoring priest wanted to make sure that we did not deviate from the true Anglo-Catholic faith. So I was sent to a guy who got a year ahead of me, and we were roommates. And I reported back every time he was deviating from being a true Anglo-Catholic. Then he got married, and I got his brother, who reported back how I was deviating from the true Anglo-Catholic. So I thought, Steve's next to me. If he watches me pray the rosaries, I get bonus points. So Mexicans and Americans who walked into this large cell, I would say probably twice the size of this room. There were about 40 men who were asleep when we walked in. We woke them up. And a man called Miguel Angel, a former prisoner, began praying Jesus songs. The guys who woke up were not too happy. I got a little nervous as they sort of got closer and closer behind us. We sang a lot of songs. I'm doing the beats. And then when Miguel Angel was finished playing, a man who was a lawyer who gave most of his time to work pro bono there began reading from John's Gospel. He read the Passion narrative. When he was done, he closed the Bible and said, God came in the person of Jesus. If you want to receive into your life, come on up and I'll pray with you. And I thought, yeah, like that's going to happen. I think about 30 of the guys in that cell all gathered around him, and he began praying for them. And as he's praying for them, all of a sudden I had a feeling the rosary was not what I should be praying. So I put it in my pocket, and I lifted my hands, and suddenly it seemed as if liquid light were pouring down from the ceiling. I was filled with energy, with life. I began babbling in a language I didn't understand. The lawyer said, Amen. It shut off like a switch. And I thought, that was weird. And just then, Father Thomas comes, the guard lets him in the back door. And he says, you, come with me. We're going to evangelize the American prisoners. I thought, great. I get to watch Father Thomas do his thing now. So we walk across the courtyard. They open for us a much smaller cell where the hungover, drunk Americans were. And Father Thomas is walking behind me, right? No. The cell door goes clank, and he goes walking away. So I thought, maybe somebody told Miguel Angel, I speak Spanish. He'll evangelize, I'll translate. So he sings Jesus songs again. These prisoners looked really unhappy. When he's done with the singing, Miguel Angel sets down his guitar and looks at me. And I looked at the others, and they're all looking at me like, yeah, you're on. I plan spontaneous moments. I don't do things on the cuff. So I thought, okay, give me a Bible here. I'll read John's gospel. That's what the lawyer did. I can do that. I start reading it. They start effing this, effing that, screaming at me. This isn't working. So I slammed the Bible shut. I said it, and I said, look, I could be back home watching the Broncos play. I'm not. I'm here because God has touched my life. Let me tell you what that means to me. When I was done, all but 2 of the prisoners asked that I pray for them. We got home, and I became more aware that in our small community, we had a constant drip of people who would start at one end of town, hit every church, ask for a donation, and then be on their way again. The $5, $10 we gave them didn't really help their needs. We weren't being good stewards of our money. So I invited all the clergy in town to come to our church for a meeting. All except the Mormon bishop showed up, which was amazing. And I shared, why don't we do this together? Form one outreach center that we all support with volunteers and our resources together. It took off. Everyone signed on. Today, almost 40 years later, it's still in business. To me, that's a sign that that was of God and not just an idea I had one day. Life is a journey of faith, a journey from loneliness to belonging, from brokenness to wholeness. May you never forget the touchstones in your life as you follow the one who is the way, the truth, and the life.